Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lina. I'm a BPS-accredited psychologist. I'm a researcher at UCL, currently doing a master's, finishing a master's in behaviour change at University College London. Let's get on with the video. Today I'm going to be breaking down the first case study that I've received from one of the viewers on my email. I'm very mindful of time this time, and let's get on with it. I just want to clarify, in this video, I'm breaking down the case study as a psychologist, not a friend, not a mother, not a girlfriend or a bestie, or just an active listener, okay? I'm trying to break it down as a psychologist. I want the audience to understand this. I'm staying completely neutral, emotionless, and fully professional. I've already mentioned in one of the previous videos, I'm going to post a disclaimer about this. I don't want to see any negative comments. I don't want to see any judgment about the people that have submitted the case studies for me to break down. They have trusted me with sensitive information. I'm using anonymous names. I'm keeping the names of the actual people who've submitted the case studies fully private and anonymous. And I've asked for their permission in advance about whether they're okay with me breaking down the case study on video and posting it online. So the first person who submitted the case study is someone called Daniel. That's their fake name that I'm using. I'm not going to say their real name. Daniel and I had an exchange over email, and Daniel actually asked me to break down his study, number one, as a psychologist, and then also, number two, as just an individual. He also asked me for my personal opinion. So I've decided to keep it fully professional. I'm filming two separate videos. One, this one, where I'm breaking it down as a psychologist, and the other one where I'm breaking it down as an individual, where I can add personal insight. Just a reminder, clinical neutrality is still a concept in clinical psychology that we have to follow, okay? So I have to be professional with this. Right, let's get on with it. So the plan for this video, I'm going to read Daniel's email, then I'm going to create something called a case formulation. It's a concept in clinical psychology. And then I will address the issue as a clinical psychologist. If you want to see my personal opinion, if you want to hear my personal insight, if you want to actually hear me give advice to Daniel on his life problem, please click on a separate video. I'm also going to add a link to that under this video. Right, let's get on with it. Let's read it together. Hello. I'm writing because I don't know who else to talk to, and I feel like I'm running out of options in my own head. Okay, Daniel, I've been living a double life for a long time, and I'm exhausted by it. I feel torn in a way I can't explain properly, like I'm being pulled in opposite directions, and whatever I do, someone will get destroyed. I've been married for 27 years. I'm highlighting the key bits. We have 2 children together. I care about my wife, and I don't want to hurt her. I genuinely believe that if I left, she wouldn't cope. She's been unhappy for a long time, especially over the past year, and the idea of putting her through a divorce feels unbearable. I'm also terrified of what this would do to my children. Even though they're adults, I feel like I'd be breaking something that can't be fixed. At the same time, I've been in a relationship with another woman for several years. We have a child together. I love her. I don't say that lightly. What I feel for her feels deeper than logic. I first saw her at a work conference years ago, and from that moment, I couldn't stop thinking about her. It felt instant and overwhelming, like something shifted inside me. I've tried to end the relationship many times. Every time I do, I fall apart. I become deeply depressed and I feel like I can't function. I don't want to be alive when she's gone. And that's why I've started to believe there's something karmic about our connection, like it's something I'm not meant to walk away from. I know how this sounds, I know how it looks on paper, but inside, it doesn't feel like I'm making selfish choices. It feels like I'm trying to survive emotionally without destroying everyone around me. I also can't stop thinking that this all started because my marriage changed after the children were born. My wife stopped looking after herself, Everything became about the kids, and I slowly disappeared from her world. I felt invisible and unwanted, and the affair made me feel seen again. I don't know if that's an excuse or just the truth as I experienced it. Right now, I feel completely lost. I don't know what I want anymore. I just know I can't keep living like this. I feel stuck, ashamed, and paralyzed. I don't know how to make a choice when every option feels catastrophic. I'm not writing to justify myself. I'm writing because I don't know how to hold all of this anymore on my own. Thank you for reading, Daniel. All right, first of all, Daniel, if you're watching this, you're probably going to be watching this. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for sharing this. This is very difficult. I really appreciate that. I just want to say that it's very brave of you to share this. Even though it's anonymous, and thank you for allowing me to post this on the internet, there might be someone out there on the internet who's going through a similar situation and who doesn't have anyone to talk to. If that's the case, guys, just another reminder, I've added my email address under this video. If you have a life problem that you are struggling to resolve, we can address it in one of my videos. You can have a call with me. We can exchange emails, whatever you prefer. Anyways, let's get on with Daniel's case. But I just want to say thank you, Daniel. Genuinely, I mean it. And there is no judgment on my channel, fully anonymous. And it's a very difficult situation. I just want to recognize that. It's very, very difficult. 27 years of marriage, having a child outside of marriage, also 2 pretty much adult kids in your marriage, and a mistress. That's very, very difficult. Okay, let's get on with the case conceptualization. I'm gonna read how I would conceptualize Daniel's case in a real life setting. We're gonna highlight the key bits, and then I'm gonna address the problem and provide my comments. Okay, so this is how I would formulate Daniel's case. So, case formulation, Daniel. Daniel experiences his life as an ongoing internal fracture. He does not experience himself as someone making choices, but as someone being pulled in opposite directions by forces he feels unable to control. Unable to control. That's very key. His dominant emotional state is not desire or excitement, but being torn. From Daniel's perspective, there is no right option, only outcomes he believes will cause irreparable harm. So the core subjective conflict is, if I choose, someone will be destroyed. So Daniel feels that no matter what, there will be someone whose heart he's going to break, whose life he's going to destroy. Daniel believes that leaving his wife would emotionally devastate her. He describes her as fragile, unhappy, and emotionally deteriorating, particularly over the past year. That's very important. He fears that divorce would be something she would not survive, and he carries a sense of responsibility for her emotional stability. Equally important, Daniel fears that leaving the marriage would permanently traumatize his children. By the way, guys, this is very important. We've got 3 kids in the case study. 2 born in the marriage, 1 was born outside the marriage. Unfortunately, Daniel doesn't specify their age, which I believe is quite key, but okay, let's just let's just figure this out with what we have for now. So he views himself as a stabilizing force in their lives and believes that his departure would fracture the family in a way that cannot be repaired, which is a fair point. From his perspective, staying is an act of protection rather than avoidance. Another key point. At the same time, Daniel believes he cannot leave his mistress. He experiences his connection to her as profound, emotionally consuming, and irreplaceable. He describes loving her deeply. Loving, I'm going to highlight this word. We're going to talk about this word a lot on my channel, guys, because I feel like a lot of us are very confused about what love is, and we have to address this. Because very often we mix up love with emotional dependency. He describes loving her deeply and experiencing her as the only place where he feels emotionally alive and seen. This creates a double bind. Leaving his wife feels cruel and dangerous. Leaving his mistress feels psychologically unbearable. As a result, Daniel remains immobilized. Okay, let's continue with the next part. Right, the origin of the affair. So this is Daniel's perspective. This is how I formulate it. I formulated it using Daniel's perspective. Daniel traces the beginning of the affair to a specific moment. Seeing his mistress for the first time at a work conference, he describes an immediate and intense emotional and physical response, which, by the way, Daniel, I'm pretty sure you're aware of that, but you didn't have to act upon that response. But we're not going to talk about that now. We don't have to act upon our impulses and chemical changes that are temporary in most cases. We don't have to act upon them. He describes an immediate and intense emotional and physical response. From that point on, he reports persistent intrusive thoughts about her and a feeling that something shifted inside him. Guys, I know people who have survived addiction. And every single day, every morning they wake up, and from what they've described to me is they wake up with this feeling of, I want to do that drug again. Oh my God, I want to do it. Like, I want to do meth right now, or I want to do heroin right now. And they wake up with this feeling every single morning, and they choose not to proceed with this impulse. So if people who have overcome addiction, severe addiction, like addiction to heroin and very hard drugs, if they can wake up every single morning and beat this impulse and not act upon it, we can, as humans, as adults, resist and work on our willpower and discipline, not to act upon our sexual impulses. But that is not something that I'm going to discuss in this video, because me giving a lecture about this would be very unprofessional. Let's continue. He describes an immediate and intense emotional and physical response. From that point on, he reports persistent intrusive thoughts versus love. We're going to talk about it. About her, and the feeling that something shifted inside him. He does not experience this as a gradual choice, but as something that happened to him. Okay, so Daniel, I'm going to be very honest. What I don't like about your email is, in a lot of the wording, I'm sensing this from you, that you're not willing to take full responsibility for your actions. Oh, this happened because my wife gave birth to our kids, and then my wife decided to shift all of her attention to our kids, so I've done this. This happened because I met this lady at work and I couldn't resist it. So it just happened to me, and it just sounds like you're not taking full accountability and full responsibility for your actions. Daniel, I'm not here to judge you, but you are an adult man. You have 3 kids. You are the family provider, protector. You're a father, most importantly. And I really want you to focus on your kids right now. I really want you to think about your future relationship with all your 3 kids. I don't want you to be focusing on the mistress and the wife right now. I want you to focus on your kids. Because I am not hearing enough of your concerns about your kids and how you're thinking of addressing your kids' future potential trauma, which, by the way, is very likely going to happen to them. That could be a life-changing trauma for all 3 of them. So when I'm reading those sentences where you say it's something that happened to you, I read it off as immaturity, if I'm being honest. It screams, I'm not ready to take full responsibility and accountability for my actions. You are your family protector and provider. Please remember that. Your kids are the priority. Their safety, mental well-being, their health should be the priority. Not some kind of feelings or impulses, but I'm sure you're aware of that. It's just from the formulation, from the email, I wish I could hear more from you about your thoughts about the kids and how you're going to proceed. Because Daniel, the decision that you were going to make, the course of action that you're going to take in the future is going to determine your future relationship with all three of them. And trust me, you don't want to end up in a situation where your kids, you said two of them are adults now, where your kids find out about all of this and they refuse to even know you and speak to you ever again, which, by the way, is very possible. So please think about that first. If we have to put this on the scales, right, whether it's your relationship with your kids in the future and the chemical impulses, the mistress and the wife, please think about your kids. You will have regrets if you ruin your relationship with your kids for life. And if they don't forgive you, you will have regrets, Daniel. And you will never forgive yourself for that. Because there is nothing more precious than your relationship with your kids. I'm not sure if you understand this now. At the same time, I get a feeling that you kind of do, but then I read sentences where you say things like, it happened to me, which screams irresponsible and not willing to take accountability. But I just want to highlight this, and not just to you, Daniel, I want to highlight this to everyone in the audience. Because in situations like this, people often don't think about the potential repercussions that affairs like this will have on the kids. How much trauma that's going to create for them, how many trust issues they will have when they grow up. And by the way, everyone, this will affect their romantic life in the future. This will affect their trust issues. This will affect their mental health. They might end up developing a mental health disorder even. But things like this shock kids to the core, especially if they find out at a young age. The damage that this can create might be irreparable, my friends. Please, this is very, very serious. Anyways, let's get on with it. Daniel believes the affair began because his wife stopped looking after herself after the birth of their children. This is what I mean, Daniel. You see? So it's the wife's fault, then it's the mistress's fault that just generally appeared and you couldn't control yourself. Once again, I'm not judging you, but please, let's phrase things differently. Because if you want me to provide a solution, if you want to solve the problem, you need to take responsibility. That's the first step. You need to realize that everything is within your control. If you're not taking any action, that's still a decision. A lack of action is still a decision, a conscious decision that you make every single day. This paralysis, the action of staying in this paralysis is still a daily decision. So, you say the affair happened because your wife stopped looking after herself after the birth of your children. He perceives her identity as becoming entirely centered on motherhood, which is fully understandable, by the way, guys. Giving birth to 2 children is super difficult. Sometimes women have difficult pregnancies. And Daniel, I hope your wife didn't, but sometimes women have postnatal depression, which is very hard to spot. And sometimes it might even take a professional addressing it and recognizing it. And also, I don't know the context of how she's raising the kids. Is she working as well? Is she not? Is she fully focused on motherhood? Is she also performing household chores? Is she looking after the house whilst you're working? What's the dynamic like? Because if she is working and looking after the kids, or if she's doing household chores and is not getting help from you on those, and if you've just completely, once again, I don't want to assume things, right? But my first question here would be, how are you helping her? And what have you done to help your wife look after the kids? Because in order for her to give you enough attention and time and care for you, she needs to have free time and free mental headspace. And she probably needs help, like a nanny or a cleaner, at least a couple of days a week. Or it doesn't have to be a nanny or a cleaner, it could just be you. Once again, I don't want to assume things, but this is a possibility, guys. Because very often I hear men say this, oh, she's just forgotten about me. You know, she's looking after the kids, she's focused on the kids. But my first question is, dear men, what have you done to support your wife and help her with raising your kids? Are you doing your part as a man and a father? Are you spending time with the kids? Are you letting her have those evenings off or have some days off to go to a beauty salon or to go to the gym or to see her friends or to just, you know, leave the house? Because sometimes even going for a walk is so good for your mental health. And then once again, I don't want to assume that she has postnatal depression, but that could have been a possibility as well. Where is the support for her? Who's providing the support for her? Are you doing it? I hope so. Because if you're not, my friends, it's very difficult to raise 2 kids on your own, especially if you have to work as well. Let's continue. He perceives her identity as becoming entirely centered on motherhood, while his emotional and relational needs faded into the background. He reports feeling neglected, unimportant, and invisible. Also, another question that I have for you, Daniel, have you addressed it with her? Have you spoken to your wife? Because maybe she doesn't even know that this is how you feel. The first step would be to speak to her about it on a day when she's not tired. Not at the end of the day when she's had a busy day, she's super exhausted and run down. But the perfect way to do this would be to maybe, I don't know, take the kids to your parents' house for the weekend or for a day or half a day, or hire a nanny for half a day and take out your wife on a date and address it with her in person. Because once again, guys, in relationships, you have to communicate. If you're adults, you have to communicate. Otherwise, you know, individuals can't read each other's minds. We have to communicate. We have to be clear and direct. It has to be open communication. She needs to be aware of this. She's your partner. Well, to be honest, I'm sorry. Now this whole scenario has been taken too far, but you should have addressed this with her as you started feeling this way, right away. Because if this is to everyone who's watching, my friends, if you want your relationship to sustain in the long run, you have to be able to communicate with your partner. And I do appreciate that different people have different communication styles. Sometimes they don't match, but you have to learn. You have to negotiate. You have to communicate. You have to agree on things, at least to agree to disagree sometimes. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But also, if your values don't align, if you clash on basic values, that's another issue for a separate topic. Anyways, let's continue. From his perspective, the affair was not about betrayal, but about survival. There you go. You see, once again, I'm not liking this. Daniel, you're not taking responsibility. You see, it's not about betrayal, it's about survival. I don't like this. Okay. I really, really want you to take responsibility, please. Choosing to start an affair with your co-worker, which is already very unprofessional. In the first place, by the way, Daniel, starting an affair at work is very unprofessional. And I don't know how you weren't scared to risk your full-time employment. Probably also taking into account that you have to support 3 kids, a wife and a mistress financially, right? Well, at the time, you probably didn't have a kid. Well, yeah, you didn't. At the time, you didn't have a mistress yet and a child yet, but you already had 2 kids and a wife to support financially. So imagine, this is also very immature. Once again, I'm not judging you. I'm trying to be objective here, but this is pure fact. It's very immature to start an affair with a coworker knowing that you've got 2 kids and a wife? How about if you lose your job and your career is ruined? How are you going to support your family unit financially? Because if it ends in a really scandalous way and people start gossiping at work and you get fired, your career might be ruined for life. And you've got all these kids to support and a wife to support financially. So you started an affair knowing this, right? You were risking the financial security of your whole family unit. It wasn't just your financial security. You were risking your kids' financial security by starting an affair with this lady. And you were risking your wife's financial security as well, who was looking after your kids. But anyways, let's continue. An attempt to reclaim a sense of being desired, chosen, and emotionally significant. I'm going to leave some comments out that I want to say because I have to be super professional. I feel like I'm already being unprofessional by adding comments here. So I'm going to highlight this bit. I just want to say something else, but I will say that in the video where I'm allowed to give my personal insights. The mistress as an emotional anchor and existential lifeline. Daniel describes his relationship with his mistress using spiritual and metaphysical language. He believes their connection is a karmic bond, something fated, inevitable, once again, not taking responsibility, and beyond rational explanation. He reports having tried to end the relationship multiple times. Each attempt was followed by intense depressive episodes, marked by despair, emptiness, and thoughts that life was not worth living. He describes these periods as moments where he felt he couldn't live without her and didn't want to exist. Because of this, Daniel, I just instantly think, this is just what comes to my mind. How about your kids, Daniel? Could you live without your kids? Because honestly, at this point, well, when it started, I believe the right thing to do would be to ask yourself, what's going to happen if my kids find out about this? How badly is it going to traumatize my kids? Am I going to lose my relationship with my kids forever? Which is, by the way, fully possible, Daniel, at this point. Because you're saying that they're grown-ups now. And that could definitely happen. Well, it's probably a bit too late to be thinking about this now. But if anyone out there who's about to start an affair, who has kids and a wife, if you're watching this video right now, please think about your kids. Ask yourself this question. Am I willing to risk my relationship with my children for this? Please think. You're probably thinking, oh, they're never going to find out. You're very wrong. Very wrong. Nowadays, it's super easy for things to slip out. Trust me, guys, it's very easy for your kids to find out if you have an affair. And by the way, if you think that you're in control, you're fully in control of this, and you're going to do everything within your power to make sure they never find out, there are still ways for them to find out, even without you influencing this. So please, this is super serious. You might start an affair with a coworker that might not even last, and you're putting the most precious thing out there on the table. Your relationship with your kids. There is nothing more sacred than that. If you don't get that yet, if you don't understand that yet, one day you will, and it might be super late, guys. I personally know people who've refused to engage with their parents because they found out that a parent had an affair. They don't speak to them anymore. They've literally told themselves they are dead to me. This is very serious and they're very traumatized. This can happen. This can genuinely happen. Anyways, let's continue. Because of this, Daniel has come to believe that ending the relationship is psychologically dangerous for him. How about your kids, Daniel? Once again, I keep asking this. How about your kids, Daniel? How dangerous is it for your kids' mental health, physical health, their future relationships, their future love life, their trust issues, their perception of family, of you as a father figure, as their parent, as their role model? Daniel, I am sorry, but this is very selfish. I'm reading all of this, and the whole case study is about how you feel, how you don't want to feel, about your pain, and I'm not seeing enough information about your kids' pain, about your wife's pain. Okay, mistress, but the mistress knew what she was doing, by the way. She knew what she was doing. So if I have to prioritize the well-being of the stakeholders in this scenario, it will be the 3 kids. And also, by the way, how's that child doing? The child that was born outside the marriage. I don't have enough information, but are you seeing that child? What's your relationship like with that child? Is that child getting enough attention from you? Or is that child basically being brought up by a single mom? So will the child have a missing father figure, which is going to traumatize him or her? I don't know their gender. It's not specified here, but guys, this is what I'm thinking about. You need to be thinking about the kids. That should be the priority for everyone involved. It's the kids, their safety and mental well-being. Okay. The emotional pain associated with separation feels intolerable. How about your kids, Daniel? How are they going to feel? Reinforcing the belief that he has no real choice. You always have a choice. A real choice. Every single day you wake up, you have a choice. Am I going to take drugs? Am I going to have sex with that coworker? Am I going to end that relationship? Am I going to set my wife free by telling her the truth and divorcing her in the most ethical way possible, making sure she's financially secure and stable for life? As ethically possible as you can at this point, although it will be very difficult to do that ethically now. I'm sorry if I'm harsh, Daniel. I have to be, Daniel. You need a wake-up call. There is not enough information in the case study about the kids, how they feel. And I was expecting more of, I'm worried about my relationship with my kids. I'm worried about how it's going to traumatize them. I'm not seeing enough of that. All I'm seeing is I wasn't seen, I wasn't chosen, I wasn't emotionally significant. It's my wife's fault. It's the mistress's fault. She was way too attractive. And I felt too sexually attracted to her to stop myself. You have to practice willpower and discipline every single day. Once again, guys, I know it's possible, and I'm not judging you, Daniel. I just know it's possible. I personally know people who are taking heroin for years, and nowadays they wake up every morning and they have that desire to hit the drug again, and they choose not to. And I'm sorry, guys, if they have formed the willpower and the discipline, if they have survived addiction, and every single day they wake up, and guys, it's very, very difficult. They were taking these drugs for years, some of them for decades. If they can manage to wake up in the morning and say no and to continue their day without the addiction, you could have said no to this. You could have said no to the affair. In his mind, staying with his mistress is not indulgence, it's emotional containment. It's all about framing. That's how you frame it, Daniel. You frame it like this. You frame it like being with your mistress is your lifeboat. You frame it in your mind that this is what's going to save you. But in reality, you're very lost, Daniel. First of all, true love, you don't love either of them. You don't love your wife, you don't love your kids, and you don't love the mistress. That's the harsh truth, Daniel. Because first of all, if you truly loved your wife, you would have never engaged in that affair. If you loved the mistress, you would have left your wife ages ago. You would have divorced her. You would have given her 50% of the acquired wealth that you've built together. Or I hope even more, actually. It would be even better if you left more, because if she were to end up with 2 kids on her own, she would need more. So, but my point is, you would have divorced her in the most humane and ethical way possible. You would have addressed the situation with your kids, hopefully with a therapist. But now at this point, you have to address it with a therapist. There's no other way to address it with a therapist. And also, I'm very concerned about your mental health as well, Daniel, because you're mentioning depressive episodes marked by despair, emptiness, and thoughts that life was not worth living. So essentially, something that's very close to suicidal thoughts. So I also want to say, you have to see a professional, because this is very serious. This is a red flag for your mental health. And depressive episodes on their own, let alone depressive episodes with thoughts that life was not worth living, that's already a red flag. You need to see a psychiatrist, not just a therapist. You need to see a therapist and a psychiatrist. Please. This is very serious. How Daniel understands himself. Okay. Oh my God, I'm still going over the formulation. I need to speed up. How Daniel understands himself. Daniel does not see himself as deceitful and manipulative. He sees himself as trapped between responsibilities and emotions and forces he feels unequipped to resolve. He experiences profound guilt, but it is paired with emotional numbness, a protective shutdown that allows him to keep functioning. He does not experience clarity about what he wants. Instead, he experiences fear of harming others, fear of psychological collapse, fear of regret, fear of being the villain in his children's story. Indecision has become his primary coping strategy. By not choosing, he delays loss, even though he recognizes that this delay is slowly eroding his sense of self. Present psychological state. So, what do we have? Daniel feels lost, fragmented, and exhausted. He reports a growing sense that his life lacks coherence and authenticity, yet feels incapable of integrating its different parts. He oscillates between guilt and emotional detachment, responsibility and escape. His statement captures this state succinctly. I don't know what to do. I feel like whatever I choose, someone will be destroyed, maybe including me. From Daniel's perspective, the problem is not a lack of insight, it's the belief that there is no survivable choice. Okay, case formulation done. Let's now get on to the solution. Okay, before I continue, I just want to say, I'm not Daniel's therapist. I do not have a full clinical assessment. Ideally, I would have to speak to the mistress, to the wife. And I don't have full collateral information from his wife, his children, and the mistress as well. I cannot tell him whether he should leave his wife, leave the mistress, or to stay. I cannot tell him what decision to make. What I want to say, though, is, Daniel, you're looking at everything from a fear-based lens. And sometimes feeling torn for years is avoidance, not confusion. Your indecision has become your coping strategy. If I don't choose, I don't lose. If I never choose, I never become the villain, which is what you're trying to avoid here. If I never choose, I delay the consequences. But Daniel, you have to face the consequences. This has gone way too far. You have 2 kids in the marriage and 1 child outside the marriage. I really want you to prioritize the well-being of your kids. I cannot tell you what to do with your life, but as a psychologist, in a separate video where I add my personal insight, I will definitely tell you what I would do in this situation. But I would never end up in this situation. It's not about me. Really trying to contain my emotions here because I'm really worried about the kids and I have to be super professional. It's very hard, but I just genuinely wish there was more about the kids in this case study, in the email. I'm very worried about their mental health, but I'm also worried about Daniel's mental health because he does mention suicidal ideation, which is already a sign that he needs to see a psychiatrist immediately. So Daniel, essentially, you believe that you are preventing harm. But Daniel, you can't prevent harm. It's impossible in this situation. It's impossible at this point. First of all, the kids have already been harmed, by the way. Because even if the kids don't know about the affair yet, the two kids in the marriage have inherently felt that something is wrong in the family unit, in their parents' relationship dynamics. They've already felt that on a subconscious level. They've absorbed it. They might not necessarily identify what they felt, but they felt it subconsciously. And that already has subconsciously affected their psyche. I want to highlight this as well. So Daniel, if you think that you haven't done any damage, the damage has already been done to a certain extent. Also, your wife has wasted years of her life in a marriage where she was cheated on, right? You have a child outside the marriage who's growing up without a father figure, who's not getting enough attention from their father. I'm not even sure if he or she knows that they have a father. You don't really mention that. I don't know if you interact with them. I don't know if you give them enough attention and time. So that's already concerning. That is already damage, Daniel, by the way. That is already damage. That is damage to their psyche. That is damage to their mental health, to the way they will see relationship, from which lens they will address, view, and form relationships and build relationships. That has already affected their attachment style and plenty of other things. If you think that there's a way to exit this to make sure that nobody is harmed, it's too late already, Daniel. Once again, as a psychologist, I cannot tell you what to do. If you want me to give you my personal insight, I will do so in a separate video. You've asked for it personally. If you didn't ask for it, I wouldn't give it to you. But this is very far. The whole situation has gone too far. And every single day, the inaction is your choice. It's a conscious choice. You are avoiding responsibility. You are avoiding accepting the fact that you've already harmed all the stakeholders in this situation. You have, Daniel. You're just avoiding the act of acknowledging that. It's not confusion. It's avoiding responsibility. And I'm sorry, I sound very harsh, but I have to be. I have to prioritize the kids and their safety. Because those 3 young kids never deserved to have attachment and trust issues. And they deserved to have a family, a healthy, loving family, to see 2 parents that love and care for each other, setting a healthy example for the kids. That's their basic human right, by the way. Another thing, Daniel, I noticed that every outcome in your case study is catastrophic. You engage in something called catastrophic forecasting, which is imagining worst case scenarios as certainties. Could the divorce be painful? Yes, 100%. Will it be painful for the kids? Yes, 100%. But they won't survive is your assumption. It's not a diagnosis. That's another key point. That's a belief that you have. That's why I said framing is very important. When we believe we are responsible for everyone's emotional survival, we overestimate our power and underestimate others' resilience. Also, the affair with your mistress is emotionally addictive. That is not love either, Daniel. That's an emotional addiction. When relationships feel overwhelming and addictive, people often move to destiny narratives because believing in destiny removes agency. Removing agency means removing responsibility. You describe the affair as karmic, inevitable, fated. But I want to tell you this, Daniel. The emotional logging, the depressive episodes that you talk about, and the intrusive thoughts that you've experienced after those breakups with your mistress are emotional dysregulation. That's not love. Love is supposed to make you feel calm. It's supposed to make you feel at peace. That is true love. And true love means knowing what is the right choice. True love means prioritizing the interests of the other person, their health, their peace, their well-being over your own. It's not some chemical neurobiological responses. It's not sexual impulses. It's not an addiction. We have to make this clear. What you are going through with your mistress is not love. It's an emotional dependency and an addiction. When you say, I don't want to live without her, that's an emotional dependency that needs to be addressed with professional help. That is not love, Daniel. Please stop framing it as love. To anyone out there, if you experience suicidal thoughts post a breakup, that is not love. That's an emotional dependence that needs professional help, that should be addressed with a professional. Stop framing it as love. That needs therapy immediately. Another thing, Daniel, where you talk about your wife, where you link your own behavior to your wife's changes in her appearance and motivation, you externalize responsibility. Now look, I get it. It's valid to feel neglected in a relationship. It's valid to feel unseen. But Daniel, engaging in a 20-year double life and feeling neglected are not the same thing. Stop framing that as an excuse for leading a double life for over 20 years. It's not your wife's fault. There is a difference between I feel lonely and my loneliness has caused this behavior. That's a huge difference. And the gap between that is called agency. You're trying to avoid recognizing that agency because it makes you feel uncomfortable, because it removes that illusion of hopelessness. Because then that requires you to take accountability and responsibility for your actions. And another point, compartmentalization. You have sustained two parallel psychological realities for over 20 years. And that requires very, very intense psychological compartmentalization, which protects you and your psyche from cognitive dissonance and shame. But in the long term, psychological compartmentalization leads to identity diffusion, and that's key. This is why you say to me, I don't know who I feel anymore. You have lost your identity completely, Daniel. Your life is divided into sealed emotional boxes. You have stopped feeling integrated. For this reason, fragmentation became exhaustion for you. Once again, I'm not a treating clinician. I do not have the full assessment. I haven't spoken to the wife. I haven't spoken to the mistress. I don't know the psychological stability of the stakeholders and the individuals involved in the case study, and giving life advice without full assessment as a clinical psychologist would be unethical and irresponsible. What I can say though, Daniel, remaining in paralysis is a daily choice that you make. Not acting is still a choice. And the more this goes on for, the harder it's going to be to end at least one of these relationships. The harder it will be for your kids, for the wife and for the mistress, and for you as well. Once again, you've mentioned suicidal thoughts, which is very, very concerning to me. The depressive episodes and suicidal thoughts that you experience post breakups with your mistress are super, super serious. They cannot be addressed by a person on YouTube. They have to be addressed with a professional, with a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist, very important, guys. And you need individual therapy, not coaching, not YouTube. If you are experiencing active thoughts of harming yourself, you must contact emergency services. I'm going to provide links to those under this video. And I just want to close this by asking you, Daniel, underneath everything, I hear something deeper. So I'm not hearing from your case study, which woman should I choose? It's more of, who am I if I'm making a choice? Who am I if I stop avoiding? Because sometimes we don't fear losing others. We fear losing the identities and the versions of ourselves that we've constructed with different individuals, in each of the roles with these individuals. And choosing forces integration, and integration feels like death to fragmented self. But that's often the beginning of psychological adulthood. I also want to say, Daniel, it's much better to live aligned with your values instead of living in fragmented identities, playing different roles with different individuals. You need to live and act in alignment with your values. That's the only way to feel at peace and avoid panic, discomfort, and this feeling of confusion and loss and avoidance. Once again, this is educational. This is not therapy. If you need support, please seek professional help. I'm going to leave the resources to specific services underneath this video. Daniel, I hope you find a solution to this. I'm going to record a video as an individual, not as a psychologist. I'm going to post it as well because you've asked me to. If anyone would like to submit their case study anonymously, you have my email, which I've added underneath this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to record the next video where I discuss this with personal insight as an individual, not as a psychologist. Thank you so much.